What if I told you that there were three things that were contributing to your communication breakdowns, and that by fixing those three things, I could help you have more effective, productive, rewarding conversations? By the end of this video, I'm going to explain to you exactly what those three things are so that you can fix them and then be well on your way to more rewarding, productive, effective communication and conversations. I help my clients figure out how to stop having the same communication problems over and over again. And I spent the last decade or so of my career figuring out how to delicately but successfully say hard things. So the first area that contributes to communication breakdowns is a lack of understanding. This seems really obvious, but a lack of understanding contributes to so many issues. If you don't understand what somebody is saying, or if they don't understand what you're saying, then what hope do you have of having an effective, productive, rewarding conversation? So in order to address this issue, the question that I recommend people always ask themselves is, what did they say and what did I hear? I'm going to repeat that again, okay? I recommend that you ask yourself, what did they say and what did I hear? By asking yourself this question, you can determine if what you heard was what the person that you're talking to actually said, or if maybe you heard something that got filtered through whatever filters that you're using when you were talking to this person, right? Maybe it was their age, maybe it was their gender, maybe it was their status, whether or not they're your boss or your subordinate or your child or your parent or your spouse. You want to make sure that when you're asking yourself, what did they say and what did I hear, that you are then removing all of the filters that you use when you're listening to people to get at the heart of, did I actually understand what that person said to me? The reason this is so important is because we filter a lot of what we hear through our assumptions based on those filters that I mentioned earlier. So if you've previously had a bad experience with somebody, or maybe you are talking to somebody and you're an American like myself, but they're British or they're Australian or they're from a Caribbean country, right? So the English that you're using, it's all English, but it's not the same English, okay? That could be another reason why what you heard and what they said might actually differ. The same words can actually mean different things depending on what country you're in or even what part of the United States that you're in. I once dated someone British and we were driving down the road and we saw a Jiffy Lube like on the side of the road. And he was explaining to me that in Britain and in England, Jiffy Lube means something incredibly different than it does here in America. But that's just one example of an instance where you're using the same words potentially, but those words could have completely different meanings. So asking yourself, what did they say and what did I hear is an incredibly important question, because if they said something that was here and you heard something that was all the way over here, the gap between those two things, the gap between what was actually said and what you heard could be astronomical, and that could contribute to a very, very big lack of understanding in a conversation. And that lack of understanding in the conversation could open up significant problems later on. So by asking yourself that question, what did they say versus what did I hear, that allows you the chance to address any significant issues regarding miscommunication early on before they can snowball into bigger problems later. And I want to reiterate, asking clarifying questions is incredibly important. If you're not sure what somebody said and you're asking yourself, what did they say versus what did I hear, and you don't actually know what they said, or you think you know what they said, but you're not sure and you have some questions, ask the questions. Ask them right then. Ask them before the conversation continues on and on and on with you having had a misunderstanding regarding what that person said. And if you get further along in the conversation and you realize, oh, wait, I thought they said something different way back when, that's okay. Ask the question at that point. If you don't ask the question right away, Maybe that's not the most ideal thing, but asking the question, period, is the most important thing. So the first thing that could lead to communication breakdowns is a lack of understanding. And you can address that by asking yourself, what did they say versus what did I hear? And then bridging that gap. The second thing that could contribute to a communication breakdown is a lack of emotional regulation. So that's point 2, lack of emotional regulation. And when I say lack of emotional regulation, what exactly do I mean? I'm talking about whether or not you are able to stay calm and manage your own emotions when confronted with a situation that might be triggering or that might bring up a lot of feelings for you. Can you prevent yourself from being hijacked by your emotions? Can you tell when your reaction might be triggered by something emotional or something potentially unrelated to the situation at hand? And do you recognize the fact that you might need to adjust your emotions, calm yourself down, or pause and take a beat before you respond to something from an emotional, triggered place? Basically, can you pause before responding, or do you just immediately pop off and say the first thing that comes to mind without stopping to think about it first? So what do I mean by this? In a professional setting, let's say your boss calls you into their office and you're not exactly sure why, but they've called you in because they say they want to talk to you about something. You get into the office and that you realize that your boss has called you in there because they want to talk to you about a particularly difficult case that you were working on last week that you have since put on hold because you needed to get some additional information before you made a final decision. Now, your boss has called you into their office because they received a call from the attorney working on that particular case, and that attorney was very, very unhappy about the delay in the processing. And so somehow they got your boss's phone number and they called your boss in order to express their displeasure with that delay. Now, in an ideal world, your boss is going to ask you in a calm manner, what happened? Why is this attorney calling me, expressing dismay at this delay? Why was their case delayed? Can you just tell me what happened? Tell me what was going on. And so then you, from an emotionally regulated place, are able to explain to your boss, okay, yep, the attorney came in with their client, they had their interview, but you weren't able to make a final decision because you needed to get some additional information, and you let the attorney know that, and you let them know that you would be in touch when a final decision would be able to be made. And so you calmly and rationally explain all of that to your boss, because hopefully your boss has asked you in a calm, rational manner to tell them what happened. You explain what happened, your boss understands why there was a delay, and then your boss is able to call the attorney back and explain to them essentially what you already told the attorney, and everything is sorted, everything is fine. You've explained the situation to your boss. You had a really good reason and rationale for why the case was delayed, and that gets sorted. Now, the flip side of that, or a different side of that coin, could be that your boss calls you in to their office and then your boss starts to ask you what happened with that particular case. You remember that attorney and then you get incredibly emotional because you maybe had a back and forth with the attorney, and then you, from an emotional, dysregulated place, start maybe not yelling and screaming at your boss, but being very, very emphatic about, well, the attorney said this, the attorney said that, da 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 da, and you just launch into a really, really long diatribe about what all happened with that case. That's not an ideal response, because then you have brought in a level of emotion to that exchange with your boss that didn't need to be there. If you were just able to calmly and rationally explain what happened with the case, why there was a delay, so that your boss had the pertinent information and the facts that they needed in order to then be able to call the attorney back, reinforce what you said, and call it a day, that would have been better. So we want to make sure that when we are confronted with a situation where maybe we're really, really invested, maybe we care a lot about the outcome, maybe we care a lot about the people involved, whatever the case may be, if you've got a lot of skin in that game, if you've got a lot of, or a really big vested interest in the outcome in something, you want to do your very, very best to come at conversations and participate in conversations about that particular topic from a calm emotionally regulated place. On a personal note, do you get incredibly upset if you've asked your child, your spouse, your parent, your family member to do something and you've asked them repeatedly and they haven't done it? We've all been there. Sometimes we get really, really frustrated and really, really upset if we've asked somebody to do something countless and countless times and it hasn't gotten done. Now, I'm not saying that I expect you to not get upset and to not get emotional if you've repeatedly asked somebody to do something and they keep saying that they forgot or they keep not doing it. We all have emotions. We are all going to have feelings about things, particularly in situations where we've repeatedly asked somebody to do something and they haven't done it. What I'm saying here is that it is highly likely that you are going to get a better result if you approach somebody from a calmer, more rational, more like you're in a better equilibrium when you come to them and you ask them why they haven't done something that you've repeatedly asked them to do. And also, if you have repeatedly asked somebody in a calm, rational, kind way to do something and they haven't done it, then maybe you need to have a conversation about the deeper issue. Why haven't they done it? Are they not able to do it? Is something preventing them from doing it? There could be an underlying reason that explains why they haven't done the thing that you've asked them to do, but you're not likely to get at that quickly. You're not likely to be able to get to the heart of the matter if you are coming to them angry, upset, yelling, frustrated. Even though those are very, very justifiable feelings for you to have if you are confronting somebody for something that you've asked them to do repeatedly and they haven't done it. What I'm saying is that it is more likely to end with a resolution to that problem if you come to them when you are in an emotionally regulated place and you're able to calmly ask them what's going on. Why haven't they done that? Why haven't they done the thing that you've repeatedly asked them to do, so that you can have a conversation that gets to the heart of that issue, hopefully without any yelling, screaming, stonewalling, silent treatment, hopefully without any of those things. Basically, you want to be able to have a conversation where you're able to get at, is there a deeper misunderstanding or disagreement or misalignment that's present that's preventing them from doing the thing you're asking them to do? You're going to be better able to get at whether there is a deeper level of misalignment or disagreement that's preventing them from doing the thing that you've asked them to do if you approach them in a calm, kind, respectful way where you are emotionally regulated and able to have that conversation. And that brings me to my last point. So this is point 3 in communication fails or things that might sabotage your conversation. You need to be able to ask yourself if you are having a misunderstanding or if you are having a disagreement. Figuring this out is a crucial piece of the puzzle to be able to solve communication problems. So how do we determine this? How do we figure that out? A misunderstanding is basically a miscommunication that is then solved by better, more enhanced communication. So let me give you an example. In a professional setting, if somebody says that they want to schedule a meeting for next Monday, and you assume that they mean the Monday, not of the week coming up, but that they mean the Monday of the week after that. But in their mind, when they said next Monday, they meant the very next Monday that's coming up. So they thought, say we're in week 1 of the month. They thought that you were talking about week 2. You thought they were talking about week 3 because you both had a different understanding of what next Monday meant. That's a misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding could then be solved by better communication and asking clarifying questions where you perhaps insert the date of the Monday that you're referring to. So Hypothetically, if somebody says, oh, I want to schedule a meeting for next Monday, and you say, okay, do you mean next Monday, March 10th, or do you mean next Monday, March 17th? That one clarifying question allows you to then address that potential misunderstanding so that everybody's on the same page about the date of the meeting on whatever Monday that you all agree on. Or something that happens in the realm of virtual meetings is that, okay, you say you want to schedule a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. Now, I'm on Eastern Standard Time, so I assume that that means, okay, tomorrow at 10 a.m. on Eastern Time, but the other person that you're talking to who said they wanted to schedule the meeting, they meant 10 a.m. Central Time. So once again, this is a situation where there's a misunderstanding. I thought that they meant 10 a.m. Eastern. They thought that they were talking about 10 a.m. Central. Then you can have a conversation to clear up, okay, are we having the meeting at 10 a.m. Eastern or 10 a.m. Central? Whatever the case may be, you're able to ask some clarifying questions, clear up the misunderstanding, and then move on from it so that you've addressed the fact that, oh, it's not that we had any sort of disagreement about the meeting time. There was just a misunderstanding about what time we were referring to. Or it's not that we had a disagreement about the Monday that we wanted to have the meeting on. We just had a misunderstanding about which Monday was being referred to. Those are misunderstandings or miscommunications that are then solved by better clarifying communication. In a personal setting, it's also very similar. You and your spouse are planning a date night and you say you want to have date night next Thursday. You might potentially need to clarify which next Thursday you are referring to. Are you referring to the Thursday that's coming up this week, or are you referring to the Thursday that's coming up next week? Again, this can be solved by clarifying what the actual date is that you are talking about. Are you talking about this Thursday, February 12th, or are you talking about next Thursday, February something else, right? You can address the misunderstanding by asking some clarifying questions and having better communication. But disagreements are different. A disagreement is a difference of opinion regarding the right course of action, the right way forward, the right way to address a particular issue. Those are disagreements, and those are different from misunderstandings. So let's talk about a disagreement in the work context. So at work, maybe you want to go with a more expensive vendor. And the reason that you want to do that is because you found that you worked with this vendor in the past. They know exactly what the ins and outs are of putting on events with your company. They have a great relationship with everybody at the company. You know that their work is going to be done on time. They're going to stay within budget. There are a whole host of reasons why you think it's a good idea to go with this vendor that on the face of it seems more expensive. You know that the work is going to be absolutely perfect. The communication is going to be top notch. You're not going to have any issues. You've worked with them before. Everything is going to go as planned. However, your new boss comes in and they're looking at all of the vendors that have been proposed, and they think and they would like to go with the vendor that is cheaper, right? They're like, okay, we want to make sure we stay within this particular amount of the budget. This vendor is cheaper. It says they offer all of the same things as this other one, so let's go with this particular vendor. Now, in order to solve for this disagreement, maybe you then explain to your boss, okay, well, actually, even though it looks like this vendor is cheaper, they have a whole bunch of add-ons and a lot of the things that we actually need for this particular event, they don't provide in their sort of base level package. We'd have to add them on, and those add-ons are additional fees, and those add-ons make it more expensive. So at the end of the day, this vendor that looks like they're cheaper isn't actually cheaper, and here are all of the reasons why. So if it's that simple and your boss was purely going based off of cost, and you explain to them, oh, actually, it looks like this vendor's cheaper, but they're not really, we should go with the other vendor, and here are all of the reasons why, and you can present that to your boss, and they're like, oh, okay, well, let's go with the vendor that you suggested because that'll actually be cheaper. You've solved for that disagreement. There was a difference of opinion, but then you explained the situation to your boss, and they, after hearing all of the facts that you presented, decided, okay, I don't disagree with you anymore. I actually agree with you. Let's go with the vendor you suggested that seems more expensive, but actually isn't. So you were able to solve for that disagreement. So if we want to talk about disagreements on a personal level, we can take a look at another situation. So on a personal level, a disagreement might be something along the lines of you and your spouse have different views on whether or not your in-laws should stay with you at your home when they come and visit for the holidays. So maybe you think your in-laws should stay at a hotel because they're going to be in town for many, many weeks. And your spouse is thinking, oh, absolutely not. Like, they are my parents. Like, they absolutely have to stay with us. That is a disagreement. You're not having a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. No, you think and you would prefer that your in-laws stayed in a hotel, and your spouse would prefer that their parents, your in-laws, stayed with you. That's a disagreement. That's a difference of opinion. That's something that you're going to need to hash out and solve to figure out if you can come to an agreement regarding where your in-laws are going to stay when they come visit you all for the holidays. This is also true if you're thinking about somebody that you're dating or anybody that you're involved with and there are certain issues that pop up. Do you all agree on the amount of time that you should spend apart? Do you all agree on the amount of time that you each are going to spend with your own respective friend groups, with your own respective families? Do you all agree on other big ticket issues and items? Do you agree on kids? Do you agree on where you want to live? Do you agree on whether or not both of you are going to work if you do choose to have kids? Do you agree on how involved you want your family members to be in the raising of your children? Are those areas where you are having any sort of disagreement that you then need to address? If you have a difference of opinion on those things, those aren't misunderstandings. Those are disagreements. Those are areas where you're going to have to come together and you're going to have some discussions and some conversations, and you're going to have to figure out, okay, can we come to agreement on these very, very big issues that are incredibly important as we think about embarking on a long-term relationship together. So a misunderstanding is something where you are having a miscommunication with somebody, whereas a disagreement is a situation where there isn't a miscommunication. You both understand what the other person is saying. You understand the points that the other person is making. You just do not agree with those points. You have a difference of opinion on the desired outcome or the situation or whatever the case may be, right? You can have a misunderstanding or you can have a disagreement, and it is very, very important to determine and figure out which one you are actually having, so that then you can do the work to solve for either the misunderstanding or the disagreement. Because the solution for a misunderstanding is not the solution for a disagreement. Those two things require two different solutions, two different answers, and you want to make sure that you are figuring out the solution to the actual issue, the actual problem that you are having. So to recap, the three things that could contribute, and that honestly do contribute to breakdowns in communication and to people not being able to have successful, effective, productive conversations are: 1, a lack of understanding. What did they say and what did you hear? And if those two are really, really far apart, then you need to do your very best to get them as close as possible so that what they said and what you heard is actually the same thing. Point 2, a lack of emotional regulation. Are you showing up to conversations calm and collected and able to have a rational discussion? Or are you showing up to conversations where you're just incredibly triggered, you are super emotional, and you're not able to engage in a thoughtful way with the other party or the other parties in the conversation? And then point 3, not knowing whether or not you are having a misunderstanding or a disagreement. You then need to figure out, okay, are we having a misunderstanding? Are we having a disagreement? And then once you know which one of those you are having, then you can apply the proper solution to be able to solve for it. So once again, 3 things that contribute to communication breakdowns: a lack of understanding, a lack of emotional regulation, and not knowing whether or not you are having a misunderstanding or a disagreement. If you fix those 3 issues, then I can't guarantee, but I will offer you sort of right up to the point where I can almost guarantee that that will help fix and solve for a lot of communication issues, communication problems, and communication breakdowns that you are having in conversations. Drop a comment below to let me know if this was helpful, if you've got any follow-up questions based on the information that I gave you, and I wish you more effective, rewarding, productive conversations in your future.